Welcome to the Business Trendsetter podcast, where we talk about trends and how to grow your business. My name is Manny Turan.
I'm Adam Hartung.
We are Spark Partners, and we help companies to grow and scale. To learn more about how we can help you do that, go to our website at sparkpartners.com. You can listen to our podcast not only on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, on our own website, but also now on Futures TV, on Apple TV and Roku TV. So for today's session, we have a special guest. His name is Mark Beres. He is the founder and CEO of Flying Leap Vineyards. How are you doing today, Mark?
Doing good. Thanks, Manny. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So occasionally we bring in guests that have a particular kind of expertise, and we kind of apply the Spark Partners lens to these businesses. Small, medium-sized businesses. And what we do for our viewers and our watchers is we help to illustrate that all of these things we talk about with respect to trends, with respect to how to grow a business, are relevant with real businesses. There's basically, they're not prompted, and we really tease out sometimes some of these things within how they run their business. And sometimes it's a bit of tough love, but it's always fun and it's always a learning experience. So with that, Mark, give us a little bit of a 30,000-foot view, if you will, of your background and why you decided to start Flying Leap Vineyards.
You got it. So I'm originally a native of Washington State. I grew up in wine country in southeastern Washington State, and that's where I developed my my agricultural background and expertise, primarily in grape farming. Left my crucible there, went off. Did a career in the military. I was a pilot. I had many hours of combat time, was injured, and retired many years later. Retired to the southwestern United States, where I was working as an engine designer, integrator, and test guy for Raytheon Missiles and Defense, working primarily on the Tomahawk cruise missile for many years. After that, or actually during that, started a small farming operation here in southern and southeastern Arizona, developing an agricultural footprint in wine grapes, looking to sell wine grapes to other wineries. Developed a wine company very early on. Wines were popular and sales grew, necessitating more agriculture, more production. Brought on a distillery in 2016, brought on aged spirits in 2020, 2021. And now in 2022, we're in our 10th vintage of wine, our 6th vintage of brandies. We make whiskeys, vodkas, everything. Today, we have a large retail footprint across the state of Arizona. We have more than 300 accounts in our wholesale portfolio. We have a consulting business. We sell wine grapes to generate revenue. We do consulting for other wineries, winemaking services for other wineries. And we also own a barbecue business called Arizona Rub. It's a side project that we own as well. So there you go. There's a little bit about me. I slipped down into a part-time consultancy mode in the missile business many years ago, primarily focusing on the wine and spirits business at this point. That's me in a nutshell.
Fantastic. Adam, take your first shot at the combat pilot here.
Well, I hope it's not viewed that way. You're an accomplished graduate of the Air Force Academy, and as you said, a test pilot, an engineer. And the thing that occurs to me, most people, in fact, I don't know anybody in my world that would think that if the natural thing to do with your background and you're living in Tucson is to open a vineyard. It just seems not the right thing to do in that part of the world. So I'd like to dig in a little bit more below the 30,000 foot and hear from you how you opted to go into agriculture in that part of the world, and then how you selected to open a vineyard compared to doing something else.
Well, we went into the vineyard business to make money, and it was a tremendous opportunity to make money. There was a great window of opportunity here in Arizona. There was a lot of demand for high quality wine. There wasn't a lot of it made in this area, and so at the time we looked at it, we said we could run the table if we could produce a very high quality product efficiently, and eventually capture some economies of scale, get distribution going, we thought we could run the table here, and that's pretty much what's happened. Okay, really, it was something that I wouldn't say that I was a flaming wine aficionado. I liked wine. I was very, very familiar with wine as a product more than anything. But I wasn't one of these people who was consumed with wine in my personal life and just felt there would be a natural transition to wine as a business. It didn't go that way. I was more of an engineer and an entrepreneur at heart, and that was really the core of who I was. And at the time, a wine business seemed like a good opportunity given the market metrics that existed at the time. And we felt we could
that intrigues me because I was raised in Oklahoma, went to college in Kansas, and then after business school in 1982 was the first time I'd ever been to California. And I took the summer off. And when I came from the north part of the state, from Seattle, drove down to San Francisco, and I didn't know that there was a wine country. I stumbled into it in 1982. I think the first wineries I found were around Calistoga in what's now called Alexander Valley, and then as I moved south, I got into Napa Valley. And I think in 2 or 3 days, I managed to taste almost every wine that was being produced at the time, or at least visit every winery, let me put it that way. And some that were well known now, like San Michelle, were just barely born at that point. I remember going to the farmhouse where the owners lived and they were growing the grapes. Let's fast forward now, it's 40 years later, and there's at least 500 wineries in Napa Valley alone. The winemaking region extends all the way up past Calistoga, up towards Healdsburg. We have the Russian River Valley now. There's probably maybe if you count that whole region up through Healdsburg and then even up towards Geyserville and to the northeast, probably over 1,000 wineries. The countryside is just literally covered with grapevines now. That's the only agricultural product you see when you're driving around. In other words, I'm getting at it's a huge, huge number of producers making a tremendously large amount of product. And I would think my entrepreneurial instincts would say, I don't have the resources to go up against a Stag's Leap and a Rutherford and a Raymond and these names and the resources that the brand provides. I would have seen that as being a marketplace that I would have been scared off entirely by that competition. So tell me again, how it was you weren't scared off if you saw an opportunity?
Well, you're assuming I'm competing with those people, and you're assuming that the market density in, say, Healdsburg, Napa, Sonoma somehow impacts us in Arizona, and the answer is it doesn't at all. And at all. They're one of the nice things about wine is it's a hyperlocal product, and the markets for wine are hyperlocal, even to a certain extent in the distribution world, as I'm learning that's the case. So I have a distinctive. I'm not. If you asked me, would I have wanted to have started Flying Leap in Napa? The answer is no. I'm with you. There's no business case to do that. I couldn't have afforded the land at $500,000 an acre. I couldn't have afforded the marketing requirements to do it there. Certainly could have built a product equally comparable to their products, but I couldn't begin to have capitalized in a competitive way in that area, which is just, so I wouldn't have even done it. Arizona, different story. And there's the answer to your question. Okay. Arizona afforded us the ability to capitalize and build a farm to table vertically integrated wine company in a way that we couldn't have done it anywhere else. So here in Arizona, land is plentiful, cheap. We have water. We have thirsty customers. We have access to the market here. We have good facilities, good talent. I mean, all the piece parts we have. The only thing we don't have is our name is not Napa. We don't have a regional brand identity the way they do there. But I could sit here and rattle through the market numbers with you, and I think you would be in awe at. We compete every day with Napa wineries. I mean, in fact, we compete with a lot of people up in the Washington State market. I ship a lot of wine to Napa. I ship a lot of wine to Walla Walla. I have a lot of wine club members in California. I have a lot of wine club members in Oregon and Washington, all over the country. So there's a I guess part of the answer to your question, it's a good one, is that a lot of people believe that, a wine business has to be California centric. And the answer, Adam, is that it does not. This is a big, bogus bunch of BS. I mean, there's great wine made in California. There's some really awful wine made in California. Okay. There's great wine made in Arizona. There's some bad wine made in Arizona. There's really good wine made in Kansas. Okay. I belong to a wine club in Illinois. I mean, there's great wines all over the place. And one of the beauties about wine as a product is that it's ubiquitous, and there's beautiful wines made all over the world that are delicious. And customers are just now beginning to expand their reach and discover some of these great wines. I don't know, long answer, but it's a good question. And I get asked it a lot. A lot of people are kind of like, well, why Arizona? And I'm like, well, why California? Why on earth would I want to start a wine business in California? I mean, the market's saturated. I mean, put it this way. Let me give you an example. The Gomberg and Fredrickson report, which is the gold standard of metric reporting in the wine business. You don't even make it into the Gomberg and Fredrickson report unless your production is at least 80,000 cases a year. Okay. Flying Leap, our company, is among the largest in the Southwest, and we're only doing about 15,000 cases a year. We don't even come close to even making it into the Gomberg and Fredrickson report. Just doesn't.
But you do make it into Casa Video. So I was telling Adam earlier that there's an old school DVD place that it's mainly a bar that grew out of an old DVD store that obviously for a lot of reasons isn't really what it used to be. But in there, they have a little wine bar, a little area where they have wines. And I saw it down there and I said, you know what? I'm going to have me some Flying Leap tonight. And I took it home and I really enjoyed it. It's one of your vintages. It's made in Mendoza, Argentina. Mm-hmm. And of course, my former wife is Argentinian. So my kids they're half Argentinian. So it was just a testament to my friend Mark as well as to my children.
Rock on.
Well, Mark mentioned a couple of trends there that I'd like to explore with him as well.
Sure.
We always talk about trends and how they impact markets and decision making. So two trends that are sitting with us, or three rather, sitting with us right now. One of them, we're having one of the hottest summers ever, and everybody says it's going to continue to get hotter, okay, regardless of why. That's the prediction. So the first question is, do you worry about heat and its impact on your vineyards? Number two, you mentioned water. Water rights are a big deal. Just this week, there was another article about how Lake Mead and Lake Powell are at the lowest levels ever since they were filled originally. And they're talking about real bad water shortage problems in the Four Corners area and anything related to the Colorado River. So what you talk about water. And the third thing is, how do you hire people someplace like Tucson, or I understand you're about an hour out of Tucson. Hiring seems to be a nationwide, well, not seems to, hiring is a nationwide problem. And how do you get good staff? So do you worry about heat? Do you worry about water? And do you worry about hiring?
Okay, I'll answer them 1, 2, 3. Heat isn't the problem. The lack of afternoon cloud cover is the problem. Okay, so do I worry about heat? No, I don't. Not at all. Okay, grapevines love heat. They do well in heat. In fact, they do very well in heat. What they don't do well in is cloudless afternoons. Okay, and so if we were having a hot summer without afternoon cloud cover, that'd be a problem. The grapes would ripen much too quickly, and we would have to pull them off the vine quickly. We would get grassy and burn flavors in the wine, which are not good. We're not having that. So, yeah, we have a hot summer. Who cares? We have hot summers every summer. So it's no hotter than any other summer.
So I understand that what you're saying is the monsoon effect is really beneficial for your location.
Well, you got to double click on monsoon effect. The thing that the monsoons do for grape growers is they bring afternoon clouds. Think of it like this. Here's a really good analogy that you and your listeners can instantly gravitate towards, and that's camping. When you're sitting around the campfire and you're roasting marshmallows, there's two ways to do it. There's two, right? One, you put the marshmallow on the stick and you stick it right into the fire, right? And it just burns the outside of the marshmallow, but you pull it out, you blow out the flame. The outside is burnt to a crisp, but the inside is cool. and hard, okay? And then you pull the outside off and you stick it back in and do it again. The other way to roast a marshmallow is you very gently warm it on the fire so that the heat slowly goes through the marshmallow and you get golden exterior with nice warm gooiness all the way down to the center, right? The second one makes the ideal s'more, right? Okay, although we've done them both. Think of the fire as the sun, and then the technique is the afternoon cloud cover. So if there's no afternoon cloud cover, it's like sticking a bunch of grapes directly into the fire. It just burns the exterior of it, but the interior is cool and hard and unripened. So you get grassy, unripe flavors, high acidity in the wines. The wines can be underwhelming in that scenario. However, if we have afternoon cloud cover, that's like a nice, slow warming cooking of a marshmallow around a fire, and you're going to get nice, lovely gooiness all the way down to the center. So what we care about is afternoon cloud cover. And I'm looking out my window, fellas, and I got lots of afternoon cloud cover. Things are good, Adam. Life is good. As far as this year, now 2020, we had no afternoon cloud cover. That was a problem, okay? So the 2020 vintage was really challenging for us, but the current vintage looks to be primo. Now, as far as water goes, I don't get water from the Colorado River. I don't get water in my farms from Lake Mead. So if Lake Mead is having issues, which it is, doesn't impact my farms. I get my water from the rain, from the sky, and I get it from the ground. And right now, our aquifer under our farms is in good shape. We've got a lot of wells. We've got good, secure water in our wells. And we have, in fact, the wells at our winery estate haven't been on for a month and a half, and they won't be on probably till end of October. So we don't use much water to start with. And we've been getting plenty of afternoon rain. We had nice rain last night. We're going to get some rain tonight. In fact, we had to get the crop duster out on Friday and put out some antifungal spray in our grapes. So right now we're looking at a huge harvest. And as far as water issues, doesn't impact us. Now, we don't use a lot of water. We're not growing triticale and cereal crops. And so, there's a lot of, and we're not growing nut trees and other things. We're growing grapes. Grapes don't use much water at all. Very little. To give you a relative term, an acre of grapes will use 8-inch acres of water in a year to produce about 4 to 8 tons of fruit, whereas a similar acre of cotton will consume 3 to 4 acre feet. Okay, so grapes consume probably 15% of the water of a comparable acre of cotton, yet produce about probably 20 times the revenue. So grapes are ideal for the desert. Now, the other one you mentioned, there was water, there was
labor. Hiring, being able to staff up.
Labor is a big problem. Labor is a big problem. But remember, we're vertically integrated, right? So we have our fingers in all these different pies. So it depends on what kind of labor you're talking about. In terms of winemaking, like production labor, we grow our own talent here. We don't, one of the problems that we have is a lot of our local kids that will go to school and learn the art of making wine will leave and go to Napa, right? They'll go over there. And so we can't retain them. So we have to train our own. So at Flying Leap, we've had to develop a very robust training program to build our own talent. We've got a really good winemaking team, but we built them from brick one. We built our own talent. We didn't go get it from some other market. We had to build it ourselves. So I've done a lot of time writing manuals, writing workbooks, spending a lot of one time with winemakers, teaching them the artistry of making wine. Distilling, we're primarily winemakers, and so I do all the distilling, and we don't do that much of it relative to the winemaking, so we haven't had to bring on a shift distiller yet at this point. As far as like retail folks, we've got a really wonderful retail staff. A lot of them have been with us for many, many years. Turnover is very, very low. It's the ideal job for somebody later in life in retirement that doesn't want too much stress, likes to talk to people, has good customer engagement skills, and those kinds of folks love the wine tasting environment. And we've got a lot of good folks in the vineyards. Vineyards are a problem. We have a good core staff, management, and full-time employees at our vineyards, but you can imagine we have to ramp up. To do that, we rely on labor contractors. And, my personal opinion is that, I tell people, I'm like, look, man, it takes armies of people to run vineyards, and it's not easy to get an army out to a vineyard. I mean, you rely on migrant labor, period. You want wine or not. If you want fresh vegetables on your table, you want fresh tomatoes, you want a good bottle of wine. I mean, I'm sorry, farms rely on migrant workers. They're wonderful people. They're well paid. The idea that they're exploited is nonsense. They're not. And we go through labor contractors to bring them in. And quite frankly, I know there's drug dealers and human traffickers and all the bad folks, but there's also a gigantic number of just good folks from Mexico that want to come in and work. Are there Americans who do it? I suppose. They're hard to find, though.
You mentioned that you have the retail side of your business. Mm-hmm. So tell me a little bit more. I think about the business you're in. You can go direct to consumer, where people are buying, say, wine tasting rooms. And then the second way is you can go wholesale, where you're putting your product in a retail store, right, and relying on them to sell your product. And then the third market I think of is going into like restaurants, right, and where they are reselling your product, but that's very different than the normal wholesale. So kind of those three markets, where did you start? Where are you today in terms of where your production goes?
Right. The way you put it is not exactly accurate, but it's okay because it's.
Well, go ahead and expand on it. That's cool.
Yeah, it's confusing to a lot of folks, and so there's retail operations, which is where you call it direct to consumer. It's what the buzzword is, and that's like a wine tasting room. Okay, you come in and you're dealing directly with the manufacturer of the product. You try it, you buy it. In a wine tasting room, we, the producer, get 100% of the margin. And so there's no middleman in that case. They're high margin sales, low volume sales. Then we have a chance to market directly, get people into our wine club, for example, which is another component of a direct to consumer model. We have that. We have about 1,300 members in our wine club, and we have, roughly anywhere between 40 and 50,000 customers per year coming into our retail properties, depending on the year. So we have a lot of retail traffic. We market directly to them and sell the products direct. We also have an online web store. We can ship to 5 states where we sell wine by mail order. Excuse me. In terms of wholesaling, okay, wholesaling is a different animal entirely. There is a middleman. In this case, the margins are much, much, much lower, okay, as you can imagine. In the world of wholesale, there are 2 categories. One is called on-premise. The other is called off-premise, okay? And there's accounts where it's all based on where the product is consumed. So if the wine is purchased and taken home, that's called an off-premise sale. If the wine is consumed at the location where you buy the wine, that's called an on-premise sale. So if you start working in the wholesaling world, you'll hear these terms on-prem and off-prem all the time, as opposed to like restaurants, chain stores. You won't hear the word restaurants. You'll hear on-premise, okay, which is what a restauant is. And then you'll hear off-premise, which is like a Safeway, a Vons, Albertsons, something like that, okay? So you'll hear these 2 different times. Flying Leap, we're about, I'd say, roughly 40% of our revenue is from wholesaling. About 60% of our wine revenue comes from direct consumer sales. We used to be about 85% direct to consumer, and that's gone down. We've substantially grown our wholesale business at our company to the point now where we're going to have to transition to a distributed wholesale model where we place our portfolio with someone else. Now, Adam, I'll tell you this: we are really different, okay? And this is a function of how Arizona law works, and I know you're in California, and the law is different there. So it may not make sense to you because the laws that wineries in your area deal with are different than ours. In Arizona, we're allowed to directly distribute our products, okay? So we are a distributor. So when I talk about wholesaling, in Arizona, we, as a producer, are allowed to wholesale products directly to on and off-prem accounts. Okay. Other states that isn't necessarily the case, or the laws are different, but that's how it works in Arizona. So Flying Leap right now is a self-distributed model. We have our own trucks, we have our own brand reps, we have our own warehousing, all that stuff. And we waited 8 years before we started wholesaling anything. So we spent 8 years developing our brand identity, developing our customer base, developing our products, labels, packaging, all this stuff. We're defining the wine blends until we were ready to branch out into the wholesale world. And then we branched out. Then we did it ourselves. You can imagine this. I'll kind of circle back to the whole California thing where we started the discussion, okay? In the world of retailing, I have the advantage over California wineries all day long. I blow them away every day because I have customers in my tasting room tasting my wines and only my wines. I can directly market to them and I get them into my wine club. In the wholesaling world, it's just the opposite. The big California wineries have the advantage. They just simply do because they can make way more product a lot cheaper than I can. And so the economies of scale of major California wineries are much, much, much more lucrative than they are for us. So in the wholesale world, they're difficult to compete with, okay? So the only way that we've been able to compete with them and get a foothold in the market was to self-distribute. And then we just blow them away. Like we just, we go in, we're a local product. We got great products. We have our own dedicated brand ambassadors growing our own wholesale brand. That's the way to do it, quite frankly. Now that we've got our portfolio built up, we're at the point where we're ready to hand that portfolio off to a distributor to transition into a distributed wholesale model. And that's what we're doing right now. That's a transition that we're in right now at our company.
Yeah, that's great, Mark. And, as a consumer of your wines, I've been to your growing operation in Sonoyta. I've been to a couple of your tasting rooms. I had some last night at Casa Video, like I mentioned, which incidentally has two prices on the wine. It has a wine price if you take it home, and it has a different price if you consume it there. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah,
but,
you'll find that at different places.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, one question I have here, and this goes back to a little bit to how Spark Partners looks at the world. What trends or what things do you see out in the future with respect to how to grow Flying Leap? What's coming in the radar, if you will, to use another nautical pun here? What's happening in the future?
A lot of stuff. Hang on 1 second. My dog is a little bit nervous because there's some thunder outside. So I'll let him in here to snuggle. So what do I see in the future? Okay, really, there's two things, too. I can answer that question instantaneously. There's two prongs for Flying Leap. Number one is to expand wholesaling. We want to expand our wholesaling up to 30,000 cases of annual production within 3 years. Okay, we want to drive our wholesaling up to about 7 million in total revenues. Is where we're looking to push it within the next 3 years. I think we've got a good vector to get there. In terms of direct consumer, that's going to be another issue we're going to do, and that's primarily with our wine club. We're going to transition our portfolio, and we're going to bifurcate it. One side of the portfolio is going to be what's called our estate line. Those are going to be small production, high margin wines available to the discriminating consumer that wants something they just can't find anywhere else. Handmade wines, all cask aged, all in premium cask, premium oaks, premium cork, big hefty bottles, premium copper foil packaging, very expensive wines of very, very high quality. Okay. On the wholesale side, we're going to go for extraordinarily delicious blends primarily, but in cheaper packaging so that we can make more volume and get it out to the market at a lower price by way of a wholesaler. So, and then of course, at that point, we're going to be looking to be acquired. So I'm hoping that probably within the next, I would say, 2 to 5 years, we're probably looking at a liquidity event for Flying Leap, and we'll probably be acquired by a major, Adam, maybe a California distributor. But we're looking to probably move on and be acquired, move on to different phases of our lives.
Great. Adam, any thoughts, any questions?
Well, good luck to you on that. By the way, for about 12, 14 years now, I've had a friend named Michael Houlihan, and he and his partner Bonnie, and I was just trying to look up Bonnie's last name. I'm sorry, I don't have it handy, but they were working in the in the San Francisco Bay Area as accountants. Oh, he was an accountant and she was somebody in an ad agency. When their client, who was a winemaker, went bankrupt, and the judge at the end said, guys, I don't have any money to give you, but you can have these vats of wine. And the two of them knew nothing at the time, but they dug in and they studied and they started working and they developed what we now call barefoot wines. Mm-hmm. And they found a segment of the market, which was this segment of people that wanted to enjoy wine, but were scared of wine because it was expensive, it was complicated, they didn't know how to buy it. So they positioned it as a low price value product that you didn't have to make a big investment in. And they would do a direct comparison and say, okay, if you get the barefoot Cabernet, it's like this Cabernet, kind of a thing. And then just by working through the details, as you've been doing, they grew that business and sold it for a lot of money. They sold it to Gallo, and Gallo continued to push the production. You probably see barefoot wines now in almost every grocery store. So they just proved you don't have to be a great winemaker to figure out a segment of a large business and be successful. And so, I congratulate you on identifying an underserved market. That's something we talk about with our people all the time. Even in large markets, there can be underserved markets. To identify the underserved market, to address the concerns that would be in that. How do I build a plan to take advantage of that market, which you've done quite well, and then to be thinking about your future scenario, the third step, which you're seeing the opportunity to expand and perhaps then sell. So it's been great talking with you. I've enjoyed it very much. You've been very successful, and I anticipate you will continue to be so with the approaches that you have. So that's kind of my thinking about it, Manny, and back to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mark, for this opportunity. I always enjoy the conversation with you. I mean, we're friends and we discuss other things in our business world, but it's always nice to see a good example of someone who is applying the principles that we talk about all the time, really understanding your customer. I would say you understand your customer more than most people that just happen to have a business, right? Because you're actually very much a tactical strategist that's looking at not only the end game on the strategy side, but the individual vectors that you said to get there. And so I really appreciate that.
Well, in the wine business, that it's so important because you got to remember there's, a wine buyer has so many alternatives they can buy. And it's like, if you want to, even in the car market, if you want a pickup truck, there really isn't, there are lots of pickup trucks, but when you think about if you want to buy a red wine, the number of choices you have is mind-numbing, right? So, exactly. So knowing the customer, knowing why they're going to come buy your product and what they're looking for, how that product influences their life, and is critical in the wine business. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. So, Mark, why don't you tell our listeners how they can find you and how they can be part of the Flying Leap experience? Okay,
piece of cake. So Flying Leap's easy to find online. You go to flyingleapvineyards.com and you can read about us. You can look at our products. You can study. You can take visual tours of our venues and properties. You can meet our people and kind of see what makes us tick. If you want to spend 5-10 minutes online learning about us, you can go to our website. And we've worked hard to make our website very informative. The other thing you can do is if you're in the southern Arizona area, Tucson, our two principal population centers, of course, Phoenix and Tucson. If you end up in the Tucson area, from downtown Tucson, we're an hour drive south, and it's a beautiful drive through some oak clustered countryside that's got sweeping views of the mountains in all quadrants, and it's quiet, peaceful, relaxing. You come down to our winery estate, and we've made it absolutely first class. You can relax, you can picnic, you can explore our operations, you can meet our staff, you can enjoy a glass of wine and listen to some tunes. It's just a really nice day trip if you're in that area. If you can't make it down to see us in person, you can go to any of our venues. We have them in Tubac, Arizona. We have 2 venues in Sonoyta and Elgin. We have venues in Prescott and in Tucson as well. And we do have tasting rooms in those areas. If you like the wines and you'd like to enjoy them, we can ship wine to addresses in California, Arizona, Washington, Minnesota, and Washington, D.C. those are the places where we have licenses.
Okay.
So
sounds great. Well, thank you for that opportunity to learn about Flying Leap Vineyards, and we thank you for your time. If you have any questions for Adam and I, you can reach out to us at manny@sparkpartners.com, and of course, adam@sparkpartners.com. With that, enjoy the rest of your week, and of course, enjoy the monsoon season. And with that, we'll talk to you later.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks, Manny.
You bet. My pleasure.